Hey guys, Tammy here. And in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the holidays. Now, I have so many clients that the holidays are such a struggle for a multitude of different reasons. So I want to kind of talk through the two or three most common. Before we dive into this topic, let me just remind you that if you like this content, you find the videos helpful, please hit like on this video and also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. The holiday issue, there's a couple different things that happen, right? One is a lot of times co-parents have conflict, believe it or not. Conflict over the schedule, over interpretation of the orders, over all these different things. And look, here's what happens. Nobody has a discussion about it until, the day of the holiday or the day before. And then guess what? Attorneys' offices are closed, courts closed, all these different things are closed, right? Christmas this year is on a Monday, so everything will be closed that Monday. Everything's closed on the Sunday before and the Saturday. So you're not going to be able to get any help, during that time. Same thing with New Year's, the following weekend, right? Everything is like Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So if you have arguments with your ex-spouse or your ex, whichever, whether you're married or not, over what the parenting plan is or the interpretation of the orders or who's going to pick who up, where and when and all those things, you are not going to have any resources to help you figure that out or mediate that situation if you wait until the last minute. Communicate with your co-parent and try to make sure that you're on the same page about how this is going to work, especially if this is new for you or only your first or second year of doing a parenting plan, because the people that get stuck on this is the kids. They end up being caught in the middle of it and caught in the middle of your argument. And so they're the ones that sort of bear the brunt of it. So please, please, please don't put your kids through that. Figure this out in the first instance. The next thing I want to talk about is, there are a lot of parents who struggle with either just being away from their kids, right? Because if you have every other holiday, which many people do, you may not have been through being away from your kids on a holiday before. This may be a new experience this year for you. And so, that can bring up all kinds of emotions. If you do have them and you aren't going to have them next year or you didn't have them last year, then there's all this pressure to make sure that it's super good and that you're like doing, you're pulling out all the stops, right? We've got a tree and we're decorating and presents and we're putting lights up on the house and we're going to look at lights and we're singing carols and we're doing we can really, baking cookies and desserts and all these different things. We can really put a lot of pressure on ourselves as to what we need, to do for this to be quote unquote good. And let me just reassure you that, okay, I think most little kids in particular obviously look forward to the presents and the gifts and things like that. But ultimately what it's really about is spending time with you, having your attention. Children want their parents' attention, even if they're 12 or 13 and they're going through that phase where you're a total embarrassment and they say they don't want anything to do with you. Trust me, children want parents' attention. So that is really the biggest gift you can give your kids is the gift of your actual presence in the room and not running around and worrying about all these different things. Sure, it's fun to engage in some of those activities and, do what you can do, but not to the point where you're totally overwhelmed, you're totally stressed out, so much so that you can't even enjoy the time with them or participate in activities with them, like, playing games or watching a Christmas movie or, whatever your family thing is. The other thing I would tell you is that as a divorced parent, I think you have to be okay with reworking your traditions. So the traditions that we had when we were with the co-parent or our ex-spouse or whatever the case may be, those traditions obviously probably aren't going to work in our new parenting plan because you probably don't have the whole uninterrupted time with your kids. You're either alternating it every year or every other year, or you're breaking it up, between like Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and New Year's Eve and New Year's Day and, Thanksgiving Day and the day after and all that kind of stuff. So you're either splitting those days up usually it depends on the age of the children, or you're just rotating those things year to year. And so you have to be willing to kind of rework your traditions. And, I got to tell you guys, like, I'm pretty big on day of being like the thing, right? I'm big on that, like with my grandkids' birthdays and things like that. It's like, okay, you're having a party this day, but still the day of is really the birthday, and we need to have a family thing or go to dinner or do something. So my kids kind of know that I'm big on that, and they indulge me in that way. But as a co-parent, when you're alternating the children each year, you have to be willing to rethink your traditions. And here's what I want to reassure you. Your kids can love your new traditions just as much as they loved the old ones. One of the things that we did with Thomas's children, and we did have the benefit of them being fairly young when we went into this, but what we started doing is the years that they were with their mom for Christmas, because Thomas's Christmas was always the 23rd through the 27th of December. And so he would not see his kids for, 4 or 5 days over that Christmas. And it was hard a lot of years. It was, emotional and hard to be away from them. And, I think it's important that you feel those feelings and that you sit with them and that you don't try to deny them. And you kind of let them flow. You got to get them out of your system, whether that's crying or however you personally cope. But stuffing it all in is not going to be good for anybody. So you have to feel those feelings when those things do come up around how your traditions have shifted or changed or whatever the case may be. But then in reality, we got to be okay with actually reworking those traditions and learning to create new ones. So when Thomas's kids were with their mom on Christmas, we always got New Year's because that's how the holidays were divided up. And so for New Year's, what I always had historically done is have a big party here at home. And by party, I just mean like, the family and maybe one friend or two of my kids, because my kids were teenagers by then. And so my goal with my teenagers was to keep them home, right? I didn't want them out running the roads on New Year's Eve. We would do like this silly string war at midnight every year. I mean, heck, I think our family room still has a little bit of silly string on it now from last year, even as we speak. That stuff is darn hard to clean off sometimes. But we have a silly string war. We do a chocolate fountain, and I have all kinds of different fruits and, all the different, marshmallows, pretzels, all the things that you use a chocolate fountain with. We do little like appetizers for the evening and all this different kind of stuff. We have poppers, for the new year, and we watch the ball drop and, all those kinds of traditions. That kind of became our New Year's thing. So when his kids would be with their mom for Christmas, we decided, okay, let's open their Christmas gifts with them on New Year's when we have New Year's, because it's a big festive situation in our house, sort of, mimics the Christmas festiveness, right? That would be a good time to do that. And so we started doing that. And something really interesting happened that we really didn't anticipate, which was that Thomas's children started to, I think they were about 7, 8, 9. They started to get enough cognition to know that, okay, they're at mom's at New Year's, but they knew what was going on in our house on New Year's. So they knew there's a chocolate fountain and a silly string war and all these things going on. And they would call and say, can you guys come get us? Mom said it's okay for us to come to your house for New Year's Eve, because mom had younger children. And so, during those years, she really couldn't go out or do anything with the kids or whatever. So they were just home. And so they would call us and be like, can you come get us? We want to come do New Year's at your house, even though we had already had them for Christmas. So it became kind of interesting the way they kind of gravitated towards that. And that carried on, throughout our whole parenting time during their childhood. I tell you that story so that you know that it doesn't have to be the exact same traditions that you've always had. I think we as adults get really latched on to that, but children are very resilient and they're very flexible. And like I said, their most important thing is they want your attention. They want that engagement. So, children are very creative. And if you ask them for their input, they can probably come up with some ideas for you of like what we could do different or what they might want to incorporate moving forward. Ask them to help you build that new tradition that gives them buy-in. And then as they get older and they do become those difficult teenagers, they've got buy-in into the process and they're more likely to participate with it and to stay involved with it as the years go by. It can be a really great thing that you can create that you didn't have before, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be worse. It just means it's going to be different. Lastly, just have grace with yourself. Like I said before, like just, know that you will get through this. It's hard. It's hard when you have to be away from your kids. It's hard when you're going through difficult things, but you will get through it. And, sometimes just having that quiet, maybe you don't have your kids and you don't have all this hubbub going on in your house. Okay, then this is your year to appreciate that quiet and appreciate the calmness and appreciate that you don't have to be up till 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve wrapping gifts and then get wrapped back up at 5 o'clock when your kids come bounding out of bed to look at the gifts, right? So you have a season of calm. And so you have to indulge in that and enjoy that. Thomas and I, one year when his kids were with their mom and my kids actually went with their dad, which was a little unusual when they were younger, but they actually went for Christmas one year with him. And I remember me and Thomas going, okay, well, we're not going to cook this big dinner just for me and him. Like that seemed a little ridiculous. So we actually got a frozen pizza. And I remember we sat on the couch and watched Christmas movies and drank a bottle of red wine and ate a frozen pizza. And honestly, it's one of my very best Christmas memories of our 17 Christmases together. So, the calmness can be something that you enjoy and that you look back and you reflect on, and it's a positive thing. It wasn't a negative thing because you didn't necessarily have your kids, So we have to enjoy whatever season that is. I'm having a season of singlehood in my life, right? And I haven't had very much of that in my life. I was married the first time for 17 years, and then Thomas and I were together for 17. And so most of my adult life, I have been married. And so I'm trying to just appreciate that, okay, I don't have anybody here to bounce decisions off of, but I also don't have anybody here that I have to argue with about decisions, right? It's all up to me. So whatever phase you're in, whether it's, you're facing a Christmas of, just you or not many people, or you're having to do something different with your kids, or you have your kids, or whatever it is, try to appreciate and enjoy this part that where you're at. Because here's one thing I'll tell you, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional with it being the holidays, with losing Thomas earlier this year. But, I look back now and last year when we were doing our Christmas celebration and we were doing our New Year celebration and we did all those things, I had no idea that would be the last one with him. So, I'm very grateful at this point that we did all the things that we did and we engaged in the ways that we did, because that created some lasting memories for me that I will forever be grateful for. So I hope you guys have a very Merry Christmas, and I hope that the channel is continuing to serve you. I've got a lot of great things coming up for the new year that I'm really excited to share with you guys, and I will see you in the next video.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon.